My job as an actor is to take what I'm given and bring it to life. That's always sort of how I've seen my job.
Aphrodite!
For future reference, I'm now Mighty Aphrodite. My new disciple thought it up.
Your new what?
So in terms of did I play it differently in one episode or another episode, pretty much I played what was happening. And just like a person, sometimes, you know, you wake up on the wrong side of the bed and someone crosses you and someone says the wrong thing and you're not a nice person that day. And then 3 days later, you feel really good. You had a wonderful night with your lover and suddenly you're in a wonderful mood and you're magnanimous and generous and funny. And sometimes Aphrodite was really nice and sometimes she was not.
You were right, Xena. It was foolish of me to devote my life to some unknown god. From now on, I'm dedicating my life to Aphrodite.
It's not exactly what we had in mind. But we'll fix that later. Right now, we've got some baggage to claim. Come on.
Well, the big difference is that the Xenaverse Aphrodite is much nicer than the Aphrodite of classical mythology. One of the interesting things about how the character of Aphrodite is developed, because we must remember, is that Aphrodite first appears as a character in Hercules, The Legendary Journeys, is that as the character of Aphrodite develops, she does actually become nicer in the Xenaverse.
So, how can I worship the goddess of love if I've never even experienced it?
You're right, that does make you kind of a poser. All right, pick a guy. Any guy.
I'll take him.
So at the beginning of Xena and in Hercules, The Legendary Journeys, for a good part of that as well, Aphrodite is much closer to the Greek Aphrodite, the actual Aphrodite of that the Greeks worshipped and feared.
Who's the most beautiful?
I mean, no, this is a tough one.
Wait! Not so fast.
Sorry, you're too late.
He hasn't made up his mind yet.
And there's something he needs to see.
I can't believe she'd resort to bribery.
Hey, you started it.
You know you want it. Pick me and it's yours.
Better luck next time.
Fool! You don't know what you've done.
That Aphrodite did not care for mortals. And you get that in Hercules, The Legendary Journeys, and early Xena.
I managed to go all the way through high school and college, good schools, fancy schools, graduated with honors, and never once had a class that had anything to do with the classics. I just missed it completely.
We tend to think about the Greek myths as somewhat like Jewish or Christian scriptures, like you have a Bible and the story in Genesis of Adam and Eve is told like one particular way and you can't change it. That's the way it is. Well, that's not how Greek myths worked. That's not how Greek gods and the religion around them worked. The Olympian gods, which Aphrodite belongs to, these gods were important because these were the gods who every Greek worshipped. They were what they called the Panhellenic gods. It didn't matter whether you were in Corinth or Sparta or Athens, all Greeks worshipped these gods. But that didn't mean that they had the same stories. And so there were many different stories. Every now and again we find vases and they seem to be depicting a story of the gods or of Aphrodite, which we don't know about. And that's quite possible because there wasn't any attempt to sort of make them uniform.
Aphrodite didn't just rise out of nowhere, although in the Greek story she rises from the foam. There were numerous goddesses of sexuality in the ancient Near East. The most famous one is Astarte, and Aphrodite is a sort of cousin of those goddesses. But in the Greek story, she is born from the genitals of Uranus. After Kronos castrates his father, he flings the genitals away from him, and the bloody foam drops into the ocean, and Aphrodite is born from the foam. One of the etymologies of the name Aphrodite is born from the foam, the goddess who comes from the foam, but it's a pretty funky sort of foam.
Cupid? Where are you?
Yo, Mom. What up?
I have an overwhelming sense of grody-ness, Cupid.
Why? What's the problem?
You did your gooey love thing on Princess Iliandra and Prince Sarpedon.
Yeah, they're a cooking couple. It's set.
But their marriage will unite their two kingdoms.
Exactly. Look, get to the point, Mom. I'm real busy.
Their fathers plan to dismantle my temples that line the border. If I lose those temples, I'll have fewer than that hagster Athena.
You know, I get asked a lot, did you create this character? Was it your idea, this whole Valley Girl talking and stuff like that? And no, I can't take responsibility for that at all. That was the writers completely. In fact, when I got down to New Zealand, Kevin Sorbo, who was directing, said, you know, we changed our dialogue a lot. So if you want to just, I don't know about this whole Valley Girl thing, maybe she should be some kind of, you know, spoiled girl from Connecticut. So if you want to go ahead and rewrite your dialogue, go ahead. And I was completely floored. I mean, this was like my 4th acting job in my life, and I'm not a writer, or at least I wasn't then. And I thought, well, you know, I had prepared so much, and I had worked with my acting teacher, and I thought to myself, well, you know, I know what I'm doing if I just stick with the dialogue. I'm not prepared to rewrite this episode.
One of the things which those of us who study ancient religions, so to speak, professionally, really liked about Hercules, the Legendary Journeys, and Xena Warrior Princess, is that they treated the Greek and Roman myths like ancient people themselves did, that they turned them into contemporary themes. So it's okay for Aphrodite to speak valley speak, Southern Californian valley speak, because in fact, in Apuleius's novel from the 2nd century AD, his Aphrodite speaks the equivalent of ancient Roman valley speak. This is the way things were done.
Delinquent losers! I've got half a mind to hit you with...
A love bolt? Hardly seems a threat. My. He certainly made a mess here.
Back off, air, I'm bummed out enough.
Sometimes the writers would write the Valley Girl slang, and I'd be like, I think I've been in LA long enough to know that that's not really what people say. They should say this instead. In fact, there was one episode, I think it was my first Xena episode, and Carl Urban was in it with me, and we had worked together on Hercules together, and we were friends from that, and we sat in my trailer and kind of tried to rework what would be some fun slang to throw in there. And I finally just ended up making a list of different Valley Girl words that I would, you know, write on the back of my script. And then that Kevin Smith would add to that. He would start giving me Kiwi lingo and slogans, and ended up with this crazy list of funny vernacular. But what was it? It was... Temples are my kahuna. That was something that Carl and I came up with. Because I don't remember what the writers wrote, but I didn't like it. I didn't think it was what she would say. So we decided to kind of create our own slang for that one. I couldn't think of some like authentic Valley Girl thing that would work, and we figured she was a surfer, so kahuna would work.
I'm Aphrodite, the goddess of love. Temples are my kahunas, the way I know whether I'm happening or not. Now I want you to undo this thing.
No way, they're eloping. It'll be over before you know it.
Oh, this is so not fair. You're forcing me to get involved.
I am not!
Yes, you are! I can whip up a major jealousy rage in no time. All I need is an accomplice.
Now there are some similarities, some constant similarities between the Xenaverse Aphrodite and the classical Aphrodite. The Aphrodite of the Xenaverse is, as she puts it in Many Happy Returns, material girl. This was very much the Aphrodite of ancient mythology. Aphrodite was into things. In terms of costume, we may think that Aphrodite's costumes are very skimpy in the Xenaverse, but you have to think that in the ancient world, Aphrodite was often displayed being simply stark naked. Obviously, you can't do that on American television. But there was one particular statue made in the ancient world by one of its greatest sculptors, a man called Praxiteles. And it's told that he saw this beautiful woman bathing in the sea, who later, this woman was called Phryne, became his lover. And this inspired him to create this statue of Aphrodite. And it was said to be so beautiful that men were aroused to sexual desire by simply looking at this statue.
I guess I started to have an inkling of how popular Aphrodite was when my cousin called me and said, "There's temples for you on the internet." And I didn't even have internet yet, and I was so confused. What? There's temples? And then I did my first convention, and I was floored. I went home in the afternoon after that convention and burst into tears because it was so overwhelming. Not really tears of sadness, but just, I mean, you live your normal life. You're a person. You do your laundry, you cook your breakfast, you go to the bank and, take out money or whatever you do. And then you go and see thousands of people with so much energy who obviously don't know me at all. They're identifying me with this character on this television show that they love so much. But it's just astonishingly overwhelming experience. So I think that's probably the first time that I really had a sense of what was happening out there.
Of course, one of the most beautiful images from Hercules' legendary journeys is the image of Aphrodite coming out of the sea. Now, Aphrodite, according to the Greek legend, was born out of the foam off the coast of Cyprus and stepped onto shore.
Wow! What in the name of Poseidon? Come on, I got you.
And in the apple, you have Aeolus fishing, and you see this clamshell appear. Now, where does the clamshell come in? Because, well, if any of us use Adobe products, you see the Botticelli picture of Venus coming out of the clamshell. And so what they do is they take the Botticelli picture of Venus coming out of the foam. And so in the apple episode, Aphrodite sort of windsurfs on this clamshell into shore.
Well, first of all, Xena, I think people will be watching this TV show for a long time. I think it's one of those moments in television history that's really important because of what I said earlier about it's really the first time that I can think of when you have two women who are really, strong women action heroes who aren't answering to men in some way or other or being dictated to.
I can't believe you did that. Come on in. No, the water's great. No, thank you. It's okay.
I don't think Aphrodite is homophobic. I think if Xena, if you want to interpret the show that Xena and Gabrielle were lovers, Aphrodite was complete cheerleader of the relationship, I think. it's a big deal. It's the first time that I can remember that a television show has had such a place for the lesbian community. I think that's a really big deal too. And so to have this pink, fluffy, blonde, bimbo-y girl is a little bit incongruous, but I think there's a little bit of genius in that, because what you don't expect in a show that's kind of becoming a feminist icon is sex and humor, and that's what Aphrodite was. And everybody likes sex and humor, including feminists and lesbians and it's an overlooked part of life, and sometimes when people get very serious. So I think maybe that's one of the reasons that she worked so well on the show and people loved her so much.
Aphrodite, although she's one of the Olympian gods in Greek mythology and in the Xenaverse, of course, but she's much older. She's linked to these ancient Near Eastern goddesses, Inanna, Ishtar, Astarte. In fact, she's one of the goddesses who we have very early records for. She's always identified with Cyprus. I mean, in the myth, she's born out of the foam and comes ashore on Cyprus. And already in the 12th century BCE, there was a temple to Aphrodite on Cyprus. So she's actually older than the myth of the Olympians. So Aphrodite, who was already this sort of powerful goddess because she was the goddess of love and sexuality, when the idea of the top gods, the Olympian gods, was formed, then obviously she was going to make it into the pantheon. And so it's very much a later story that she becomes the daughter of Zeus. That's not what she originally was.
Owie! What's with the attitude? I let you sleep in my temple, I show real concern for your insomnia, and you treat me like I'm a rash where the sun don't shine.
I didn't mean to be rude. I don't want to bother you with my troubles.
Sweet pea. I am immortal, you know. I got nothing but time.
The doctor is in.
Surprisingly, in some ways, the most pivotal episode for Aphrodite's evolution in the show was Punchlines, which was almost an afterthought. They had already shot the show. I was down filming another episode, and they asked me at the last minute, can you stay for a few more days and shoot a few more scenes we're going to put into Punchlines. Punchlines was a bottle show.
What is this? You know, slumber party mode. So we're to really talk about sex.
I feel ridiculous.
Want me to pierce your ear?
No!
It was really about Gabrielle, a story with Gabrielle and Lachrymose, and then they decided they needed a little bit of funny in there, so they put in Aphrodite. But again, here's an episode basically with me and Renee, and that's when Aphrodite gets into the hot tub. That's when Aphrodite psychoanalyzes Gabrielle, and there's that slightly famous line about some, what was it, like possible repressed impulses or something like that, that became such a famous sort of fun fan line. Again, you're gonna have to ask the fans what my line was. But I think that's sort of the moment when Aphrodite got in there with Gabrielle, and they created their own connection and their own friendship and relationship, and Aphrodite started to take a personal interest in Gabrielle specifically, and the love between Gabrielle and Xena.
Have you read any of her so-called stories? A warrior who loves the common person. You'd think she was a goddess. Pretty soon, when people think of love, they're gonna think Xena, not Aphrodite.
Xena!
Don't blame her. It's Gabrielle and her busy quill. That's your problem.
We talk about Aphrodite and Ares and the gods as if they're human beings, but they're not actually. They're gods. I think of them as archetypal human impulses. So in some ways you can look at the episode Mother, The Twilight of the Gods, as this family crisis where Aphrodite is going against her family, making a choice to betray her family in order to stand up for her friend, who she thinks is innocent, who pretty much is, Gabrielle.
Where are they? They're probably in the main hall, which is right through there.
Aphrodite, you might want to take off. Things could get ugly.
Bye, little one.
Thank you.
In another way, you can look at it as all these different human forces playing against each other. And of course, Aphrodite, she is love. She's the embodiment of love, all kinds of love, but certainly also magnanimous love, generous love, redemptive love. So she kind of has no choice but to stick up for Gabrielle. She can't really. Ares would, of course, go try to kill her because he's the god of war, but Aphrodite is the god of love. She can't. Even if she, I think even if she didn't already have this relationship, she would have stuck up for her. I might not be right about that, but certainly since she already had this connection, she had no choice. She had to fight for her, I think.
Happy birthday.
Speaking of which, we have got a show to catch. Bye-bye.
Have fun, you two. So, friends, I can work with that. Some of my best friends are friends. But we need to rethink the whole retro sacrificial thing.
Many ways, many happy returns goes back to Aphrodite as we saw in the beginning of Xena. Aphrodite, in the beginning of Xena, no, she's this not so dumb blonde goddess. She's vain. And one of the episodes that we meet her in, it's the third season, The Quill is Mightier Than the Pen. Remember, she's really put out because she's been compared to Xena, and she's going to do something about it.
Xena, and make someone else the hero for a change. Xena had gone fishing. The lone warrior, Gabrielle, awoke with a jerk as 5 barbarians rode out of the woods. Twirling her trusty staff, she delivered kicks of such fury. This fiction stuff can be really fun.
Oh yeah, a lot of fun.
I think Xena just sort of annoyed her a little bit because she just wasn't into the same stuff. You know, Aphrodite was especially in this show, was very, very girly, and Xena's not very girly at all. I think probably Aphrodite annoyed Xena more than Xena annoyed Aphrodite. Clearly, Aphrodite developed a special friendship with Gabrielle, and then because of that, I think. Because of the relationship between Aphrodite and Gabrielle, then she becomes interested in the relationship between Gabrielle and Xena.
Aphrodite, by the time we reach her in Greek poetry, is a powerful goddess, and she's hymned famously by the poet Sappho on the island of Lesbos in the 8th century, 8th to 7th century BCE. So this is a prayer, and it means, Aphrodite, immortal one, enthroned upon a beautiful throne painted in all different colors, twisty, devious child of Zeus, I beg you, don't condemn me, mistress, don't condemn me to misery and heartaches in my spirit. But Sappho says, come to me. So then in the next stanzas, Aphrodite comes winging down through the air in her chariot drawn by sparrows with their little wings whirring, and the sparrow is the sacred bird of Aphrodite. It's supposed to be phallic. And Aphrodite comes and she says to Sappho, she like puts her hands on her hips and she says, "Oh Sappho, what is it this time?" Because Sappho is apparently always praying to Aphrodite. And she says, "Who's wronging you now?" And then she makes her a promise. And she says, "Sappho, if she's running away now, soon she'll be chasing." But she doesn't say chasing you. Soon she'll be chasing somebody, because Aphrodite is tricky and somewhat cruel, so she's not going to give in that easily.
One of the most famous poems of Sappho is her ode to Aphrodite. And in it, she gets really conversational with the goddess. She says, "Oh, goddess, please don't torment me with misled love." And then Aphrodite comes down and says, "Hey, I'll fix everything. The woman you want, she doesn't want you. I'll get her wanting you. She'll do the chasing. I'll take care of everything."
The Romans borrow this Aphrodite. They had a love goddess of their own, Venus, whose name just means loveliness. And sometimes the Romans talk about a kind of Greek-like Aphrodite, but they did have all sorts of Venuses of their own. They like to divide goddesses up into different kinds of functions. They were very functional people. So they had Venus who turns the hearts of women to do their duty, and different Venuses for different classes of women. And there were cults of Venus that were practiced and to which there were devotees that we can tell from inscriptions in stone. Very popular.
Aphrodite was a pagan goddess. And the story of motherhood, in fact, of that whole story arc in Xena Warrior Princess, is the twilight of the gods. Now, that is not classical mythology. It's a mixture of Nordic, Wagnerian twilight of the god mythology with historical references to the triumph of Christianity.
I should die for my deeds.
You're right. You must die to the things of the flesh and be reborn to the way of love.
And from that point onwards, from motherhood and in the later episodes, we have this idea that of the Olympian gods, two have survived, and that these two gods are these permanent features of human life, love and war, Aphrodite and Ares.
Wait a minute. You wanted Xena out of the way, so you enchanted my scroll?
Ares was being his usual manipulative self. He's got some army somewhere ready to pounce on the valley. He wanted Xena out of the way, so he wanted to get me mad at you.
You figured that all out by yourself, did you?
Hey, don't believe everything you hear about blondes. Look, Sweet Pea, just give me back my powers. Then I'll unzap the scroll.
No. Write mine back in first. That army's waiting for me to give him a signal that Xena's gone.
Not helping your cause any, Slick.
I promise, if you give me my powers back, I'll call off the attack, okay?
Pigs can fly.
You can. Wait.
Things will happen, and people who go to do the right thing will end up doing the wrong thing. It's like something else takes over. It's like Ares, inhabits your body and forces you to do crazy things. It's why the gods were so powerful. It's why people were so afraid of Aphrodite, because if you fall in love, God forbid, you're going to sell your house, you're going to move across the country, stop acting, and have a baby, or something like that. And it's so interesting to watch. We can tell the same story over and over again in different ways. We can change the names, but you see the same thing. Last weekend was Passover, and it's so interesting the way so much of the story that you hear in Passover is very similar to a story that gets told at Easter. At Easter dinner, you eat lamb and you hunt eggs. At Passover dinner, you have an egg on the table and you eat a lamb. It's two different religions, very similar, rituals. I think that I'm going to spend the rest of my life, thinking about this stuff and finding new evidence of it.